All right, everyone, the holidays are here, which means one thing. It is time for a very special holiday eating America. And today, we're going straight to the East Coast, to Massachusetts, to make one of the most iconic all-time pies slash cakes. Yet, around this time of year, it's one of the stars of the show at many holiday tables. And I'm talking about the legendary Boston cream pie. Now, as you guys know, if you've been watching for a while, we're no stranger to anything Boston cream. I mean, last year we did Boston cream donuts, and back in April we did Boston cream ham pies. And I've got links to both of these amazing recipes in the description, as well as cards floating around. So it's time to pay tribute to the original, the masterpiece, the one that came from the Parker House Hotel in Boston, Massachusetts.
Time to get creamy. And in this bowl is 6 large eggs, and to that I'm going to be adding in 2/3 of a cup of sugar. And the next thing we're going to do, and this is super important, is add in 1 teaspoon of table salt or fine sea salt. Guys, please, I tell you this all the time, salt is super important to desserts. It makes it taste good. And this is 1/4 of a cup of cornstarch. This is our primary thickening agent. Then we're going to break the remaining solid yolks and get this nice and worked in. This has to be done first because this custard is going to need maximum time to cool before we insert it into our pie slash cake. And then once your confectionery eggs look something like this, it's time to get to the stove and start cooking. It's time to get
steamy.
And inside this pot is 2 cups of milk, and we're going to slowly bring this up to temp on a medium-high heat. We're looking to steam this, not simmer or boil. Now, technically, this should be heavy whipping cream, but at the time of this recording, we're going through a major winter storm, so I had to substitute with what I had available. And once we have some good steam action going, which for me took about 4 minutes, we're going to slowly introduce this into our eggs. This is called tempering. And once we put that milk in, we're going to beat the living daylights out of it to keep these eggs from cooking. And then we're going to repeat this process until we've used half of the steamed milk. And at this point, our eggs are fully tempered, which means they will not be a confectionery scramble in the pot. We're going to go ahead and dump this tempered egg mixture directly into our remaining milk. We're going to reduce the heat to medium because this is still going to be easy to burn and scorch, and prepare for the most intense forearm workout of your life because we're going to be beating the ever-loving out of this custard for the next 5 minutes or until it's thickened. And once you have some nice, thick, custardy results here, we're going to pass this through a fine mesh sieve. Regardless of how perfectly your custard is cooked, there is still a possibility and an inevitability that those chunks and curds may still live and form at the bottom of the pot. And look at that, ain't she purty? So it's better safe than sorry, because let's face it, no one wants chunky custard. So I'm going to put half of this into the sieve and work it down. And once we've gotten that thoroughly passed through, we're going to add in the remaining half. And then guys, after this is all said and done, it's time to wrap this up. And if you watched my video on Boston cream donuts, then this finishing step might look mighty familiar to you. That was just 4 tablespoons of cold, unsalted butter going in. And then we're just going to add 1.5 teaspoons of real vanilla extract, guys. You can't ignore this, otherwise your custard's going to taste as plain as printer paper. Don't ask me how I know. And then we're just going to use the residual heat from our custard and just fold in this butter gently. We're using that to melt it in. This is going to richen and thicken this custard even more. However, once that butter becomes mostly dissolved, I'm going to switch back to the whisk and make sure those little bitty butter pellets that remain get fully emulsified into our custard. And once we have a nice, smooth, and creamy custard, all we got to do now is cover it with some plastic wrap. Please be mindful that you need to make full contact, surface contact with the custard to prevent a skin from forming. This is crucial. And once we have lovingly smashed down our plastic wrap onto the face of our custard, we're going to throw this bad boy in the fridge and let it chill for at least 2 hours, but you can definitely make this the night before. So this should be set by the time our pie is ready. And moving on, it's time to start working on the cake, or pie. Honestly, it's both. So what's in the pot is 3/4 of a cup of milk and 6 tablespoons of unsalted butter, even though you can't really see all of it. And we're just going to put this to a medium-high heat, and we're just looking to melt the butter and steam the milk, nothing more than that. What we're making is called a hot milk sponge cake, and this is what's traditionally used to make this recipe. Now, if you don't want to go through this process, you can definitely substitute with a boxed yellow cake. That's what most grocery stores do when you buy those pre-made Boston cream pies. And after about 4 minutes, we got the results we're looking for, so we're going to take this off the heat and start working on our dry ingredients. And moving on, in this bowl is 1.5 cups of all-purpose flour, and then we're just going to toss in 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder and 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt, and then we're going to mix that right in. That's for leavening and flavor. I know this looks minimal, but meet me at the mixer and I'll show you the magic. And in the bowl of our stand mixer, we have 3 whole eggs, to which we're going to add 1.5 cups of sugar, and then we're going to lock this bad boy up and put it on a high mixing speed for about 5 minutes. We are going to aerate this. The base of our sponge cake has to be light and airy and fluffy, otherwise we're going to have a dense cake. So after about 5 minutes, this yellow tint should turn into a nice, fluffy, airy, sort of like a soft peak sort of thing, kind of like what you see here. Very creamy, very bubbly, and that's exactly what you want. That being said, don't overdo this, otherwise you'll get kind of a stiffer mix, which is going to equate into a tougher cake. And all I'm doing here is just very briefly removing the whisk attachment just long enough to shake off all that excess back into the bowl, and then we're going to reattach it, lock this bad boy back up, put it on a low mixing speed, and start to slowly introduce that hot, steamy, buttery milk we got going on. We're going to do this in thirds because we got to temper this egg mixture we have here. We kind of got a double tempered situation going on. And we're going to repeat this process, making sure it's fully incorporated before adding the next third in. And once we've used all of that beautiful hot buttery milk, I want to increase this to a higher speed and make sure that air goes in there and cools this mixture down for about another minute or two before proceeding with the next step, which is introducing our dry ingredients. And all we're going to be doing here is just adding in a third of that beautiful flour mixture in at a time, making sure it's fully incorporated. And at this point, I'm going to slow down the speed because this is where things can complicate if we overmix it. We cannot have a dense cake here. And once we have used the last of our dry ingredients, we're going to go ahead and immediately cut off our mixer and then bring this to the counter and do the rest by hand. This is going to ensure that we get everything incorporated without putting it at the mercy of the stand mixer for too long. Again, any longer in that thing and it will be tough. So a few gentle stirs by hand will ensure that this is going to be a light and fluffy cake. And after that, we're simply just going to pour this beautifully made batter into the bottom of a springform pan lined with a circular sheet of parchment paper to prevent things from sticking. And no, I did not include video footage of me making that because I kind of cut paper like an untrained 5-year-old given a handsaw to do it with. Figure I'd save you guys some pain. And after that, we're just going to smooth it out and then put it in the oven on 350 degrees for about 30 to 33 minutes until you can stick a toothpick through it and it comes out clean. So technically, yes, we are making a cake. But if you guys really want to know why this is called a pie, back in the day when they created this, they made pies in cake pans, kind of like this. So technically, cakes and pies were pretty much the same thing. So there's a little bit of Boston cream pie knowledge for you, so I'll see you when this comes out. After 45 minutes, we have a beautifully cooked cake, and mine took a little bit longer than anticipated because I did not have a secondary pan to divide my batter into. Now I need to let this cake cool for at least 20 minutes, and in that time, let's go ahead and start working on our ganache. And in this bowl is 2 cups of semi-sweet chocolate chips and 1 cup of milk, and then we're just going to heat it gently in the microwave until everything is just melted. Then we're going to briskly whisk to combine until everything is homogeneous, and once your ganache looks like this, we're simply just going to set it to the side while our cake finishes cooling. And now it's time to operate on patient cake. And after I get done losing my battle with the springform pan, we're going to very gently turn this thing over onto a cutting board lined with a cooling rack, and then we are going to start the process of slowly removing that parchment paper. And this really did a pretty good job of keeping the cake from sticking to the pan outside of that one area that I did not have coverage, thanks largely due to my disability grade crafting skills, but we're not going to talk about that. And after that's done, we're going to very gently turn this bad boy right side up, and then we've got to draw a path for surgery. So all we're going to do is take a small sharp knife, run it halfway down the side of our cake, and once we determine where the center is, we're going to very gently draw a line all the way around the cake. If you have a turntable, this will make your life a lot easier. Also, be sure to not puncture the cake at all. We're just simply tracing an outline for the final cut to ensure clean, even cuts. Now that that's done, we're just simply going to take a large serrated knife and carve all the way around that line that we've made, and then we should have 2 even, beautiful looking halves just like this. And we're just going to say goodbye to our good friend the cooling rack and place each of our halves side by side and give it one last feel for temperature. And guys, if it's still really, really warm when you touch it, let it cool for a few minutes so that way you do not melt your custard. Ours has cooled perfectly. So we're just going to go ahead and whisk up our beautiful custard, making sure that we remove or work out any skins or separation that may have formed. And then we're just going to start piling it on. I'm only doing this on one side. That's traditionally how it's done. So we're going to pack this sucker on thick, making sure we use all of it. Now, when people make Boston cream pies, a lot of them will allow that filling to kind of drip down the sides to create an aesthetic. I don't like that. I like a nice trim filling, and I want to make sure all of it stays inside. So, of course, we're going to make sure everything is covered from corner to corner, and anything that looks like it's drooping over the side, I'm going to work back in towards the center. And once we have everything nice and loaded with that custard cream, we're going to close this bad boy up, and then I'm just going to tidy it with a paper towel, making sure anything that drips over gets wiped off. And once we have a nice, neat, uniform-looking cake sandwich, which is kind of what this is, we're going to go ahead and start topping it with this lovely, beautiful chocolate ganache, making sure we leave no bald spots and that entire top is covered. Now, guys, I like mine to stay on top, but unfortunately, a lot of this did drip. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just a personal preference. But honestly, guys, once you look at it, that drip looks kind of sexy. This cake has drip. Now, take a look at that. All we got to do now is stick it in the fridge for a minimum of 2 hours or up to overnight.
All right, guys, this is it. This is the slice. Let me bring it to you guys. Look at that. Look at that. Isn't that a thing of beauty? I think we respected Boston well, but did we actually do the job? Let's find out. Maybe another 15, 20 minutes in the fridge would have made this even more divine. Honestly, you can make this cake a day before you need to serve it. That way everything is set and it's cool, cold, crisp, and refrigerated. I did end up forgetting to put 2 teaspoons of vanilla into the batter mix. I am kind of noticing a little loss of flavor there, but it is still so good. The ganache is wonderful, not too sweet, kind of brings down a lot of the sugars and the sweetness that are in the cake and in the custard. And hands down, that sponge cake is the move. Now, granted, you can do yellow cake, and again, like I said earlier in the video, most of your store-bought Boston cream pies come with, a yellow cake, base, which is why they're so dense and they're so heavy. But if you've got the time, and this is really easy to make, you can make a light, airy sort of sponge cake base to your Boston cream pie. And it's more of an inviting sort of treat. If you got a dessert that sits way too heavy, way too soon, you don't really want to go in for that second bite. It's a one and done experience. And this is so special, it deserves to be more than a one and done sort of deal. Now, that being said, do something different, you guys. All you pumpkin pie lovers, all you sweet potato pie lovers, good. Look, guys. I'm one of those too, but I can put aside my love for these things to do something different. And that's what that's what this channel is all about, is doing something different. Like, with the gourmet burgers and the sizzling summer recipes that I do. It's all about going and doing something different. It beats going to other people's houses and having the same meal over and over. Try putting this at your Thanksgiving table instead of your usual. I mean, what's cooking if you can't really flex to your friends or family, about something special you made, and this would do it. I'm not saying you have to, but I would love for you to try this. It's an iconic, dessert on its own, but around Thanksgiving time in Massachusetts, this is one of the iconic things that you have to have on the table. And guys, if you're watching from Boston or Massachusetts, let me know how I did. And since it's so close to the holidays, Thanksgiving is right around the corner, I will leave the entire recipe in the description so that way you guys can make it tonight. Love you guys. Also, like I mentioned in the video, we're in the middle of a winter storm right now, and a lot of the ingredients I needed for, not only this recipe, but the next one were just simply not available, especially like heavy whipping cream and half. But I did mention in the video, where I would put, the half and heavy whip. And in the recipe, I will substitute that with, where I would put those as well. So that way you know where to use the heavy whip and the half and half. If not, always milk works. Until next time, try something new at your holiday table. I love you guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.